Bem-vindos ao nosso espaço, um mergulho profundo nos assuntos mais interessantes de esportes, ciências e temas gerais do momento. Aqui você vai encontrar conteúdo de qualidade, com análises empolgantes e descobertas fascinantes que vão expandir seus horizontes. Nossa missão é trazer informação relevante de forma dinâmica e descontraída. Queremos que você faça parte dessa jornada incrível de conhecimento e diversão. Se gostar do nosso conteúdo, não esqueça de deixar seu like e se inscrever no canal para não perder nenhuma novidade. Ative o sininho também. Aproveite!
If you love science, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have you ever wondered why some ancient alphabets look like a series of jagged lightning bolts, while others flow with the grace of a river? We often think of language as a purely intellectual pursuit, a product of the human mind evolving to communicate complex thoughts. But there is a physical reality to writing that we rarely consider, the medium. Today, we are exploring a concept I call the Mohs scale of phonetics. It is the theory that the geological makeup of a region, specifically the hardness of local minerals, directly dictated the phonetic structure and visual design of ancient writing systems. To understand this, we first need to look at the Mohs scale itself. Created by Friedrich Mohs in 1812, it ranks minerals from 1 to 10 based on their scratch resistance. Talc is a 1. Diamond is a 10. Ancient civilizations didn't have pens and paper. They had what the earth provided: clay, limestone, basalt, and wood. The hardness of these materials created a physical constraint. If you live in a river valley with abundance of soft clay, like the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, your writing material is a Mohs level 1 or 2. When you press a reed stylus into wet clay, you aren't scratching, you're displacing. This led to Cuneiform, a system of wedge-shaped impressions. Because the clay was soft and prone to blurring if you drew long, dragging lines, the phonetics were broken down into distinct, staccato marks. The geology of the Tigris and Euphrates forced a specific aesthetic that defined the world's first writing. Now, let us travel north to the rugged landscapes of Scandinavia and Germania. Here, the primary writing surfaces were often hard woods or dense stones like granite and basalt, which sit much higher on the Mohs scale, typically between 5 and 7. To record a message, you couldn't simply press a reed into the surface. You had to use a chisel or a knife. If you try to carve a circle into a piece of wood with a grain, the wood will likely split. If you try to carve a curve into hard basalt, your tool is likely to slip. This physical reality gave birth to the runes. The Elder Futhark alphabet is composed almost entirely of straight, vertical, and diagonal lines. There are no horizontal lines because they would disappear into the wood grain, and there are no curves because the mineral hardness of the local stone made them nearly impossible for a common traveler to execute. The very sounds of the Germanic languages were eventually mapped to these jagged, high-resistance shapes. In ancient Egypt, we see a fascinating dual-track evolution based on the Mohs scale. For monumental inscriptions, the things meant to last forever, they used hard limestone and granite. This required professional stonemasons and gave us the iconic, highly detailed hieroglyphs. However, for daily life, the Egyptians utilized papyrus. On the Mohs scale, papyrus and ink represent a near-zero resistance environment. This lack of friction allowed for the development of hieratic and later demotic scripts. These were cursive, fluid, and fast. Because the material didn't fight back, the phonetics could become more complex and interconnected. The speed of a language's written form is often a direct reflection of how much the writing surface resists the scribe. This geological determinism even influenced the Phoenician alphabet, the ancestor of our own Latin ABCs. The Phoenicians were traders who needed a portable, efficient way to keep records. They moved between regions of varying geology. By simplifying their phonetic symbols into a few easily scratched strokes that could work on anything from a soft wax tablet to a hard limestone shard, they created a universal hardness-resistant code. This efficiency is why their system spread so rapidly across the Mediterranean. When we look at the history of human communication, we cannot ignore the ground we stand on. Our vowels and consonants were not just plucked from the air, they were forged against the resistance of the planet. The transition from the angular, high Mohs alphabets of the Iron Age to the loopy, fluid scripts of the Renaissance is essentially a story of us moving towards softer and softer writing surfaces. We traded the chisel for the quill, and in doing so, we allowed our letters to bend. The Mohs scale of phonetics shows us that the history of the human voice is etched in stone, quite literally. Every time you write a letter, you are utilizing a design that was once optimized for the minerals of your ancestors. For more incredible facts like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.